Hello everyone, my name is Melody Johnson and today I'll be teaching you about zeros of polynomial functions. Zeros are the x values that make the function equal to 0 or where the graph crosses the x-axis. The zeros of a polynomial function are the x values that make fx equal 0. These are also called x-intercepts, where the graph crosses or touches the x-axis. We can find them by factoring the polynomial or using the graph. So for today, I will be providing you with two examples on how to demonstrate that. My first example that I'm going to go ahead and show you is y equals x squared minus 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it down so that way we can go over that expression. So first, what we're going to do is we are going to write the expression. Okay, so first what we're going to do is we're going to write the equation, which is y equal x squared minus 4. Now, the first step that we're going to do is we're going to factor the expression. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is factor it out. And when you factor it, you're going to get x minus 2 and x plus 2, and then we're going to equal it out to 0. Our next step is going to be to set each factor equals to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to put x minus 2 equal 0 and x plus 2 equal 0. Like that. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and solve for x. So for x minus 2, we're going to plus 2 on each side. And then that will give us x equal 2. Then for the other equation where it's x plus 2 equals 0, what we're going to do is minus 2 on each side. And then we're going to be left with x equals negative 2. So then that gives me two x values. The first x value would be 2, and then the second x value would be negative 2. So these are the zeros or the x-intercepts, which will be at negative 2 and 2. I'll go ahead and mark these points on a graph so that way I can show it to you. So I'm going to go ahead and get the graph set up. So on the y-axis, we're going to do, we can do 4, 2, 0. And then negative 2, negative 4. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and do our x-axis. So we're going to do We're going to go ahead and do negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0. And then we are going to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I was able to put the graph together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the points. So we're going to do negative 2, 0, which will be the first point, and then the next point will be 2, 0. So then I'm gonna go ahead graph this. Gonna go down to -4. Okay, so what I'm currently doing is drawing it for you. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the point so that way I can demonstrate it to you. And then this would be -2, 0, and then this would be 2, 0. So this is the graph here that I was able to draw. So if you take a look, you can see that I did graph the points. So this is our first point here, which will be x is -2, 0. And then also on the x-axis, we have 2, 0. And also when we go ahead to draw it, we have to make sure we go down to -4 when doing it and then going back up. So this would be the first example of zeros of y equal x squared minus 4. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I am going to go ahead and show you a second example. Now, for my second example, I am going to do the cubic function of x cubed minus x. So I'm going to write the equation first, x cubed minus x. So step 1, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the equation. So the equation is y equals x cubed minus x. So the first step that we're going to do is we are going to first factor the expression. Now, to factor the expression, I'm going to factor it out. So we're going to have x equals x squared minus 1, which equals to 0. Now we're going to have to factor again. So when we factor again, we're then going to get x, and then in parentheses x minus 1, and then parentheses x plus 1 equal 0. Now, after we factor again, our next step would then to be to set each factor equal to 0. So when we go ahead and we make each factor equal to 0, we're then going to be left with x equal 0. We're also going to be left with x equals 1 and x equal -1. So how I was able to get those points for the x-intercept is we would have to, as mentioned, we would have to have each factor equal to 0. Now, with that being said, x equals 0, and then when we do x minus 1, we'll do x minus 1 equals 0. We're going to add 1 to each side. So then that will give us x equals 1. And then for the next factor where it's x plus 1 equals 0, we're going to minus 1 on each side. And then x will be equal to -1. So that's how I was able to get x equal 1, x equal -1, and x equal +1. Now, these are the zeros, or the x-intercepts would be at -1, 0, and 1. I'm going to go ahead and show you where the 0 crosses the x-axis on the graph. Now, to do that, I'm going to draw the graph. So it'll be y equal x cubed minus x. I'm going to go ahead and draw the graph here. So for our points for the y-axis, I'm going to go ahead and do 2.0. I'm going to do 1.5. I'm going to do 1.0. I'm going to do 0.5, and then I'm going to do 0. And then we're going to do negative 0.5, negative 1.0, negative 1.5, and then negative 2.0. That's going to be for our y-axis. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to show you. So far I have the y-axis. I'm going to go ahead and label the x-axis. So I'm going to do negative 2.0. Then I'm going to do negative 1.5. And then I'm going to do negative 1.0. And then I'm going to do negative 0.5. And then I'm going to get 0. And then on this side, I'm going to do 0.5, 1.0, 1.5, and then 2.0. Okay. So I do have the graph all graphed and shown here. So this is what the graph looks like so far. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to then go ahead and graph those points. So the first point that we're going to graph is negative 1, 0, which would be here. And then the next point we're going to graph is 0, 0, which is here. And then the next point that we're going to do is 1, 0, which is here. So those are the points that we graphed. And then what I'm going to do is go ahead and graph the figure. So we're going to start here. So we're going to start here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the points for you. And I'm also going to label the points. So this will be negative 1, 0. This will be 0, 0. And then this will be 1, 0. Okay, so this is what the graph would look like. So as you can tell, we then went ahead and we labeled the points for x equal 1 and x equal negative 1, as well as x equal 0. So the zeros of a polynomial tells us where the graph crosses or touches the x-axis. We can find them by setting fx equal to 0 and then solving for x. Each 0 represents on the x-axis on the graph. I just want to give another look at both the graphs. So this was our first example. And then this was our second example. Thank you so much for watching my mini lesson on zeros of a polynomial function. Thank you. Bye.